I think the first time I saw the words medical trauma written out, I was like, oh, it was such a light bulb moment of, oh, that's what I'm experiencing. That's me.
Welcome to the Medical Trauma Support Podcast, the show where we shine a light on the hidden impacts of medical trauma, explore tools for healing, and empower you to take control of your health journey. I'm Sarah, your host, a passionate advocate for trauma-informed care, somatic healing, and compassionate conversations. I'll bring you expert insights, healing strategies, and personal stories of resilience to help you feel seen, heard, and supported on your path to recovery. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Medical Trauma Support Podcast. And today I have Kim Humphrey with me, and she has a business called Vibrational Body. And she also teaches around town. And I met Kim when I attended one of her yoga nidra classes at a wellness resort. And it was amazing. And I love the way that you approach working with people and being with people, Kim. So I'm like super excited to talk to you today. So how do you want to introduce yourself in a different way than I just did?
I mean, sure. I think that was succinct and fabulous. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I have a lot of different roles. So we could say I'm a speech therapist, I am a yoga teacher, meditation teacher, sound healer. I'm just really, really grateful to get to share these tools, really, that were so helpful to me. And that's what I get to do these days. So
yeah,
it all comes together under a vibrational body. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And also I have done you have a free yoga nidra on your website that is wonderful. So anybody listening, I highly recommend that to get a little peace or maybe take a little nap or to help you get to sleep. So, but Kim is here today because she has a story, her own personal medical trauma story, and how that led her to the work she's doing now. So Kim, will you start out by telling us about your story?
Yeah, I'm so honored to be here sharing it. It is something that has driven really my whole adult life and really just something that I have started talking about, I think, because I didn't really have the words. I didn't understand how to talk about it.
I just right there, just not having the words, that is such a big part of why this podcast exists, because so many people don't have the words for medical trauma.
Yeah.
And so just having the words is almost like such a crucial piece to starting to understand it in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I think the first time I saw the words medical trauma written out, I was like, oh, it was such a light bulb moment of, oh, that's what I'm experiencing. That's me, So I had a lot of injuries, and mainly in high school, but I had a couple of back injuries kind of leading up to the car accident. My first day of my senior year of high school. And I had actually been on my way to physical therapy, and treatment just took another turn towards pain anesthesiology, right? To just try to manage nerve damage and headaches I was having, and just a lot of pain in my neck and back. So they offered me these procedures called they're really ablations, but radio frequency ablations of cranial nerves in my neck. So I had 9 procedures my senior year of high school.
Wow.
And you could only do one side at a time or you totally lose balance, and they were all under conscious sedation. So, and one of the sides they messed up once and had to go back because they didn't, I guess, fully get what they needed to get. And because it's conscious sedation, you can tell them, right? When you're feeling pain. And I was able to say that I needed more pain medication. And so I think kind of just really the trauma of staying frozen while these nerves were being burned off had built up by kind of some of those later treatments.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept asking for more pain medication. I kept saying, I still feel it. I still feel it.
Yeah.
And they gave me so much that I actually flatlined
Wow.
and watched it happen. I watched it happen on the screen. I completely left my body,
Mm-hmm.
was watching them and just could hear the words over and over. We're losing her. We're losing her. We're losing her. And
Wow.
they put something in my IV and all of a sudden I was back. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
And we live in this, and I was an athlete, so I very much lived in this, like, you push through, you
Mhm.
do the thing that has to be done with your body.
Right.
And so they said, are you okay to continue? And I said, yep, I'm fine, I keep going.
So that same day or
That same procedure, like I came
wow.
back and they kept going. And I was part of it. I had to tell them when they hit the right spot. And so that experience, and yet I really loved the procedures in a way. I
Mhm.
think because I really loved the pain medication.
Yeah.
And so the only way that I really had to relate to that experience, really for quite a few years through college and a bit after even, was just to kind of laugh it off
Mm-hmm.
and say, like, well, I just know I can never do IV drugs, you know? Like, I know that's something I need to stay away from.
Yeah.
And I knew there was numbness, I couldn't feel really my whole upper back for a
Mm-hmm.
while. And then sensation would start to come back, but it's almost like this itch under the surface that you can't actually, like, the skin was numb, but like there was sensation coming back.
Interesting.
And so, I had been an athlete. And so as this was going on, I couldn't have any impact. I couldn't have any movement because of nerves regenerating.
Yeah.
And so I begged, I was just like, you got to give me something.
Yeah.
And so they said, fine, you can do yoga, but you can't stand on your head. And I said, okay, no problem.
So this was within your senior year that you
This was in
started?
my senior year of high school. I was in Indianapolis,
Mhm.
Indiana. My mom belonged to a gym. They had some, like, I think at that point it wasn't even regular classes. It was just like someone was coming in to do this like yoga series. And she was like, oh, well, that's what the doctor said you can do. And I was like, great. I had no idea what
Yeah.
I was getting into. And it was so helpful.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, I could focus my mind, I could be in my body. And I think I pulled kind of in and out
Mm.
of that, through college and through really through college. I was kind of like in and I was out of the yoga space. Like the numbness was still there. There were ways I didn't want to experience it, that I was avoiding even touching on that.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about because I feel like oftentimes yoga is a place where you feel things.
Yeah.
And so I was curious in that senior year if you started to feel it or if it was still maybe something that you just couldn't even acknowledge.
It was really something I couldn't acknowledge. And I actually did have that motion.
Yeah.
Literally when I would talk about, like, I notice it now, that, oh, it was one of those steps of like, oh gosh, you can't be with that part of yourself,
Yeah.
which then made my head completely disconnected
Yeah.
from my body in multiple ways that manifested in multiple ways.
Yeah.
And it was really during grad school. So I went on then to work in special ed
Mm-hmm.
and to get my master's in communication sciences and
Mm-hmm.
disorders. So to become a speech therapist,
Mm-hmm.
right? which I was an English major, language made sense, but there was also this recognition of like, there's a lot to heal here.
It's also like that connection, right? You said you kind of left here and went here, which I think so many of us do, is it's like, oh, the mind is a safer place than the body. And I think that happens so often with medical trauma too, because the body's been through some really hard things. And it's like, if I step back into that thing, I'm going to have to feel.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to deal with the things that happen. So I think it's so common to want to hang out in the mind.
Yeah. And right, we have order. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I could learn anatomy and physiology and neurology and just, really nerd out on all of this really cool information,
Yeah.
and learn a lot and help others,
Right.
but not have to fully be, with my own
Right.
experience. And that's where I think too, we just don't have a lot of tools in
No.
Western medicine to be with our body. We have a lot of tools to, allopathically fix something
Right.
that's broken and needs fixing,
Yeah.
and that's what yoga really gave me.
Mm-hmm.
It started bit by bit, it gave me tools. So in grad school, I didn't know that this woman was a trauma-informed therapist, but I was so drawn to her classes. I felt so safe
Mm-hmm.
there. And I think in some of kind of those deeper relaxations, I was actually able to start
Mm-hmm.
being with what was there. And then after grad school, I went to Mexico for a few months and just picked a yoga studio. I said, you know what? I've been in my head. I've been doing this mind stuff for the last 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? Deeply in academia. And I need to read a book that I want to read. I want to, be in my body. I want to study yoga. So I went and picked a town that had one yoga studio in someone's home, kind of like a palapa studio up above their home. And he taught yoga 6 days a week at 8 a.m. and
Mm-hmm.
Sundays were off. And so I started doing that. And he was very Iyengar based, very alignment based, light on yoga, was really what he was teaching. And he did the same sequence every day, which included headstand. And I had been advised not to stand on my head.
Yes. So was that a lifelong thing that you were never supposed to
So I
stand?
don't know, because I never went back to the pain
Yeah.
anesthesiologist. I was supposed to need these ablations like every 2 years. And after that first experience, I was just like, no,
Right. Yeah.
this can't. I knew enough to be like, no, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
That's actually not helpful.
Yeah.
Or I got as much help from it as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And, he would just tell me, go into child's pose. Go into child's pose.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it. Go into child's pose. And one day he said to me, your body has the strength to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you go into child's pose and you just see it right here. And one day it'll happen. And I was like, okay, it was I didn't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I could just, visualize.
Mm-hmm.
And one day there was like this outline of like a purple figure, just like uncurling up. And I was like, I think if I just, do this. And it happened,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh, I'm healed. Oh, great. Look at that,
Yeah.
And I had no idea.
Right. I know.
you know,
At the beginning of the healing journey.
right, exactly. Like sweet young little me. She thought she was healed. How
Yeah.
cute.
And it was going to be that easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And yet there was a sense of trust
Mm-hmm.
in my body that I was starting to regain. And so, yeah, I ended up coming home to Austin and then deciding to move here. My family's here, and decided, yeah, I'm going to use my degree. At that point, my mom was actually like, maybe you should teach yoga. I was like, no, I'm not a teacher. I'm very much a student. And yeah, I just got this degree. I love working with people. I wanted to be a clinician. And so, yeah, I started, the speech therapy route. I worked with adults, I worked with kids, and specifically babies birth to 3. I went the whole other spectrum and worked in pediatrics and early intervention. And then during that time, I was gathering my own practices. I was starting to um, learn and read about somatics and somatic therapy. Some amazing teachers in Austin um, whose classes I love. And, Angie Knight and Jen Wooten have been just huge mentors and kind of people helping me along this
Yes.
journey.
Jen has been my teacher. And
Amazing.
yeah, she's amazing. I just finished her 50-hour somatics course, which was amazing to dive even deeper into it. And she's going to be on the podcast.
Oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
it'll be
Yes, she's
exciting to
such
have
a
her here.
gift.
Yes.
She's such a gift. And, in this time, I got into an abusive relationship also. I was still really disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And I came out of that relationship just knowing I needed to reconnect to my yoga practice.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't safe, actually, at that point for me to go to a studio and kind of leave the house and do something for myself. It's like I didn't know what that was going to cause. And
Yeah.
so I ordered Yoga Journal to the house.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the process of extracting, myself from that situation. And in that first yoga journal, there was an article by Richard Miller, who developed iRest, Yoga Nidra. And it was just the 10 steps of iRest, Yoga Nidra. And it promised peace. It promised this feeling of your true nature of peace. And I was kind of like, all right, well, let's, let's try this. And I would just lay down and do a step, and then I'd sit up and read the next step. And then I'd lay down and do a step and sit up and read the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And there was enough of a shift that at one point, just doing that short little practice, there was a feeling of a peace that I had forgotten, even existed. It was like, oh, that's possible. That's possible.
Yeah, and I think, Kim, I guess one thing that we probably need to do is explain what Yoga Nidra is, because I think it could be incredibly helpful for people whose medical trauma has involved losing some movement ability. Because I think oftentimes people hear yoga and think it's movement, but Yoga Nidra is not physical movement. And I'm sure you can sum it up really beautifully. So,
It's not physical movement. It is a guided meditation that is different than other guided meditations, right? And that it really follows the trajectory that our consciousness moves through as we move into sleep, right? And so the yogis are using this practice to kind of use this very natural progression of sleep to remain connected to awareness, right? And so even as the mind and the body come into deep sleep, there is this presence, right, of yourself and awareness. But as we move through those layers, we're moving through our whole human experience, right? We're moving through our physical body, we're moving through the movement of our breath, through the opposites in our mind of feelings and emotions and thoughts and beliefs. And so while the practice itself, just moving through that process, right, itself is so deeply soothing to our whole system, right? There are then also tools in each of those layers that we can use to work with the human experience. And I think that's something that the iRest protocol and Richard Miller in particular has just given us the greatest gift because he's also a clinical psychologist. And so, yeah, it really was through that, specifically the iRest practice, that I started feeling the connection between an emotion of anger and the somatic felt experience of anger,
Mhm.
right? And that there can be an opposite to that, and that I can also experience that opposite,
Mhm.
right? And this practice of holding opposites actually at each level, that in each level we're really exploring what comprises the human experience. And so for me, with numbness and pain,
Mhm.
that was super powerful to
Yeah.
even just peel off the label of pain and go, okay, there's sensation.
Mhm.
What is the sensation?
So
That's
was yoga nidra kind of your first opportunity to start to step into that original medical trauma? Or do you feel like,
yeah. I mean, in yoga classes, it
yeah,
would start to come up as tears, I
yeah,
think, and I didn't really understand.
yeah.
And it was really through that structure of I rest, yoga nidra, that I started to really be able to, I think, be with things long enough and to even have the guidance of like, okay, there are feelings and emotions that are
Right.
associated with sensation, just to have that guidance that was like, whoa. And
Mhm.
then I started going into the work of Peter Levine
Oh, yeah.
and Bessel van der Kolk, Body Keeps the Score, all of these different somatic teachers. I started actually doing some of the exercises that Peter Levine gives by
Mhm.
myself and actually
Mhm.
re-traumatizing myself. So I would just even try to walk in place and burst into tears.
Yes.
I'd start to release some of that frozenness. And so, yeah, I just started finding methodologies and practitioners at a wellness center in Arizona. Actually, I got to experience a modality of holographic memory resolution, which
Interesting.
literally
I don't
shifted.
even know what that is.
It was developed by a man named Brent Baum. He has many different titles and past jobs
Hmm.
that he's held. But while working in a treatment center, an addiction treatment center in Arizona, he started to come up with this model of really using color as frequency to counteract. It's another way, essentially, of using opposites, but from a holographic perspective, where you're tapping into your own just inner healer. That your
Mm.
mind body comes up with the exact right color. No one can give that to you.
Wow.
And it really did shift
Yeah.
everything for me for a while. And at that same trip, I met my first sound healing teacher,
Mm.
who gave me a session with the Himalayan bowls, which are kind of all around me here because I get to share that now too. And that was so profound for me that I got up from that session and just said, okay, what is this? Please teach me.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
can't go home without this.
Yes.
And so I was gathering, right? I just started kind of gathering these tools. Yoga Nidra was a big in. It is a foundation of everything that I share. The
Mhm.
sound, the vibration of the metal bowls was a really profound tool as well. I found Buddhism, which started giving me more of a foundation, um, even just for the experiences I was having in Yoga Nidra. It really gave that
Mhm.
a really helpful foundation for me. And so started putting all these tools together and working with even the beliefs. It came up so profoundly that numbness led to deep sadness, led to this belief that I'm broken and
Mm.
I let a doctor break me,
Mhm.
you know and then the opposite, I am also completely whole,
Mhm.
you know And I really think it was that once we start working at the level of beliefs, it is
Yeah.
just so, so profoundly powerful.
Mhm.
And that too, right? Like each belief, everything is held as sensation. And so when
Yes.
we've had these traumas, right? It's like, well, we have layers
Yes.
around them.
Well, and it's so interesting because I think that even though we talk about beliefs and that makes us think about the mind, I actually think to get to these deep core beliefs, you have to go through the body. The body tells us, and again, it's layers, it's layers. It's not a one day thing where you sit and meditate and you figure out all your core beliefs. I don't know, maybe it is for some people. But for me, it's been years of getting deeper into my body and better getting to understand my body. And but it's also a lifelong journey.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I will ever be done. I'm super grateful for these practices because it does. It feels like a moment to moment, just even relating with other drivers on the road, relating with coworkers, relating with my partner, you
Yeah.
know, beliefs and feelings and all of those things come up, and that being able to check in with my body to be like, hey, what's happening? you know
Right. 'Cause I think in my experience, what happens is as we start this healing journey and we go deeper and deeper into it, it's like we uncover our humanness. We become more and more human. So now when we're in the traffic and there's maybe a really angry driver or somebody unsafe, I can see them as a human now in a way that when you're not in your own humanness, it's very hard to see. So it's like, that's what I think happens because the hard things never just go away. I mean, we're going to get upset. We're human, right? We're going to get upset. We're going to get scared. We're going to have hard things happen. There's going to be grief. There's going to be loss. But when we are in our own humanity, it's like we can better like be with ourselves. We can better connect to others. We can better connect to like whatever our source is, our higher power. There's so much beauty in doing the work, but it makes you more human, not less.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And just that being able to step back and go, whoa, what's happening here? What am I feeling?
Yes.
Right? Because especially for me, the car accident was really, the medical trauma was a trauma, but the car accident that led to it was also a trauma.
Yes.
And so just having people cut me off in traffic
Yeah.
really scares me,
Yeah.
is what it is. It's really terrifying.
Hmm.
And, that would lead to road rage, of
Right.
how dare you, like you're
Protecting
driving.
yourself. You're protecting yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just even being able to go, whoa, okay, you stopped breathing, your heart is racing,
Hmm.
you're really scared, right? What you're actually feeling is not how dare you, but I don't want you to hurt me.
Hmm.
And I can recognize, well, I don't want you to hurt yourself either.
Right.
And so it's been a really beautiful practice. I don't know, I've been doing it for a long time now, but of just when someone cuts me off or something feels really unsafe on the road, that I just go, may we both get where we're going safely.
Hmm.
Right? That's what I really want from this situation.
Right.
Right? I don't need you to know that that wasn't okay. I don't,
Right.
just maybe all get where we're going safely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
And right. And then we can relate to our world differently. And we
Yes.
have a way to relate to ourselves.
Yes. There's so much more when you can connect to yourself. There's so much more connection to other humans. There's so much more connection again to like whatever your higher power is. It's when you shut off the connection to your own body, you're shutting off your connection to really everything.
Everything.
That deeper, fulfilling connection, that like love and gratitude and joy and all of these things that we want. We have to tap into the body to get them.
Yeah.
But
Mind
again,
will not figure it out.
no, it cannot. But when we're talking about medical trauma, trauma makes it harder oftentimes to have that connection. I mean, probably the majority of times it really impacts our connection to ourselves and our own bodies. And so I just love that you found all these beautiful ways to do it and to find safety. Like I heard you say multiple times, like feeling safe with people, being able to trust people. So finding practices and practitioners that help you feel safe so that you can gradually find safety in yourself,
Well, and
which,
that's just it, right? These tools are so helpful, but ultimately, it is your own individual journey of being with yourself.
yes.
And so I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I was always very intentional about my teachers. I
Yeah.
really did not, go to new teachers' classes. Yeah, I was very careful.
Yes.
Um, and recognize now like that's what I was looking for. I needed someone to be able to hold the space for me to be with my experience and
Hmm.
actually not need something from me. Like
Right.
I can't be giving you validation and also be, doing my deep work. Like there's too
Right.
much here. Just create the container and give me the practices to go in.
Yeah.
And we're blessed with some really great teachers.
We are in Austin very, very lucky. And you're one of them. So
Well,
now you were one of them. And so when did you make that transition from using it more for personal healing? I mean, we are always going to use it for personal healing, but when you did that shift from like the personal healing to becoming that person for others.
yeah. So I actually moved to Chicago for about 8 months, and I needed to change my speech therapy license over there to be able to work,
Mm-hmm.
and it took a really long time. Like it just the whole paperwork aspect. It took about that whole 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so during that time, I was writing a blog on feeding therapy. Kind of actually now I realize compiling my whole career
Mm-hmm.
into, okay, here's what every family who's working with this needs. Here's what I tell everyone, if you're working with feeding, it's food play,
Mm-hmm.
it's sensory exploration. And I did a whole blog on food play.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up coming back to Austin and starting to create a private practice called Learn to Love Food.
Oh,
And I have a whole other Instagram account. I still have that website up as a resource for families. And when I moved back, my first thought was, oh my God, I get Jen and Angie back.
yeah.
I get my teachers back. I hadn't found my yoga home in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And in this transitional break time, it became really clear, well, no, this is what I want to share. Actually, I
Mm-hmm.
could build this whole business around feeding therapy, and it's helpful and people need it, and you have the specialized skill set. And what I want to tell all of my families is just lie down,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just lie down. And I have these practices that could be really helpful for all of the other things you're going through. Like information is helpful, therapeutics, therapy, it's helpful. I want you to lie
Mm-hmm.
down. And so, yeah, I decided to start making that change. I was still seeing a few kids, privately and working with a few families, but I started doing yoga teacher trainings.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew, though, I'd been practicing yoga for 16 years at that point. So I knew what I wanted to teach, so I kind of knew that progression of, okay, you need a 200 hour, you need a 300 hour. You
Mm-hmm.
want to study with Richard Miller, go do iRest.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I wanted to study the bowls. I wanted to learn from my teacher, Pam, in Tucson. And then she was part of the Atma Buddhi School in Boulder, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started, I set this kind of, I call it like a personal master's degree. It's like you kind of put together your own program
Yeah.
over these years and started teaching, as I was gathering these skills and putting them together. And it was just so beautiful because I started seeing them be really helpful, for other people.
Yeah. Well, I also think that there is a depth of knowing from personal experience, from lived experience, that you can't get any other way. So coming into it in this way, and I think to go back to what you said about teachers, I am the same way. I am incredibly particular about my teachers. And I think that is because I have chosen teachers who have the lived experience of what they are talking about. They have gone through the darkness and gotten moved through the darkness to get to the light. And there is just something so profoundly safe about that because they really get it. And so I just think that's probably one of the reasons I loved your class so much is that there is a depth that comes from being in the darkness and knowing what it is like to be in the darkness and the hard places and have found their practices, usually the same ones they're teaching, that have gotten them out of that deep, dark place. And I think, probably a lot of the people listening may be in their dark place right now. When we talk about medical trauma, there is it can be so dark. It can be so easy to lose hope. And that's one of the reasons that I'm talking to people like you, because I want people in that dark place to know that there is light, even though they may not feel it. There is light, and to hear other people's stories and lived experience and be able to even just pick up on the tiniest little glimmer of hope.
Yeah, and as you say that too, it feels really important just to say we're expanding our capacity to be with the darkness,
Yes.
right? Expanding our capacity to be with the pain, that also that space to be like, maybe not now,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
maybe not now. Maybe
Mhm.
right? I think in Peter Levine calls it titrating, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
drop by drop.
Yes.
And that may be enough, and
Absolutely.
I rest, we come back to an inner resource, to a
Mhm.
feeling of safety that is a home base, that it's only as it feels curious,
Right.
right?
Yes, you're not
To
overly pushing and
right.
really re-traumatizing. And I think that's one of the things that I also love about this kind of work that you're doing is I feel like there is a gentleness and a slowness to it that is appropriate for trauma. And
Yeah,
there's
it feels
that.
really important that sometimes this kind of work, it can be like, ooh, we're doing these things to be with it and we're going to be with it, and it can become more of that, I'm not doing it right, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. And the feelings of shame
Yeah.
that, oh, I'm not getting better fast enough. I'm not, you
Yeah.
know,
Why aren't I feeling the bliss? Why aren't
right,
I getting to the euphoria,
right.
Or even why can't I access it?
Yeah.
If there's a blankness or there's a numbness or there's a memory lapse,
Mm,
well, why can't I be with it even, you
right.
know? And yeah, just that kindness. I call it often like this, building a bridge of trust
Yes.
with the body, that just like any friend, if we ignore them for a while, they're going to stop reaching out.
Yes.
They're going to stop giving us those nudges. And
Mhm,
our body does the same thing,
mhm.
So in my experience, it's been that, like, okay, hey, I'm listening. Oh, really? Okay, hey, I got something for you. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
And it's like, okay, you know, that more and more, then you kind of build that bridge, that when you start to say, okay, I see you, but I can't be with that right now.
Right.
It's
You're at least
okay.
acknowledging it. Yes, because you're saying, I see you and I hear you, and I don't have the capacity right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is very different than ignoring.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
starts to exactly just hold that kind and gentle space for ourselves, that, like, really just that expanding the capacity, is enough.
Yes, and I love that. And Kim, this conversation just feels so soothing to my nervous system, and I just am reminded of how soothing it is to be with you and to get to like experience your gifts. And so I'm wondering if you could tell the people listening, whether they're in Austin or somewhere else, how they can work with you.
Yeah, for sure. I have a lot of things going on right now. So we have Yoga Nidra teacher training, which is starting tomorrow. But I'll also have another one in the fall coming up. I teach for the Atma Buddhi School now, so the Sound Healing School in Boulder. I teach levels 1 and 2 here in Austin, so the next level 1 is coming up in March. I teach different workshops, incorporating Yoga Nidra into, sound experiences, but also my partner's an oil painter, so we do Yoga Nidra and oil painting workshops.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm actually starting to share some of my speech therapy background in sound healing trainings, just the very basics of acoustics and anatomy and physiology of the hearing system for sound healers, because we are affecting a system.
Yeah.
And so yeah, all of those things are up on my website. So just www.vibrationalbody.com. You can find me there, or on Instagram at vibrational.body.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm always available, if people have questions or even are looking for other recommendations. I definitely do teach specifically iRest in private sessions, and also at a recovery center in town. But also, yeah, if someone's looking for an iRest training or an iRest retreat, or just all of these different ways that the practices come up with different teachers that I might know of, I'm always available as a resource, and people can email me.
Amazing. Thank you. And in the show notes, I'm going to list your website and your Instagram so that people can click there and they can connect with you. Thank you so much, Kim. I knew it was going to be amazing to talk to you. And it was like, I feel just soothed by your energy and getting to be with you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a joy to share with you and all of your people.
Awesome. Thank you.